Welcome to Undressing Intimacy, where we cut through the bullshit
Greggy,
so we can get naked.
you can't say that.
Why not? How would you say it then?
Well, maybe more like, welcome to Undressing Intimacy, where we undress emotionally so we can undress physically.
That's exactly what I said. Not sure what the problem is. Welcome to episode number
98.
We're so excited today. We have a guest, and let me kind of set up how we came to come across this guest that we're so excited to have. We've talked about a lot in the podcast, but I'll mention again that our youngest son was diagnosed as autistic very late in life. And we went through a very difficult patch with him and really struggled on how we could best support him, especially because he had become very good at covering it up, obviously, because we didn't discover it until late in life. And we've been working through that. And then as we went through our coaching lives and started coaching couples, we've also discovered a lot of times we come across couples that either one of them, most likely it's just one of them, is neurodivergent and are struggling to help understand what's going on in this relationship. And we've had to work with them. And so for our own personal experience and for our coaches, coaching our couples experiences, we've come a lot to start thinking about what does it mean to be neurodivergent and how does that work in a relationship? Well, today we have Jodi Carlton, and this is what she does. She works with neurodivergent individuals in marriage, and we're so excited to talk to her. So Amy, do you want to introduce her real quick?
Yes. And I found you, Jodi, through your podcast, and I love your message and your framing about neurodiversity and that it's not a defect and that, you know, a lot of it's about translation and learning to understand and different meanings and nervous system regulation. And so much of it just resonated with me that I was grateful to find a resource like you.
Thank you.
Jodi Carlton has a master's in education, is a neurodiverse relationship expert, educator, podcast host, and founder of the Neurodiverse Professional Peer Network, which is a global community for professionals working in the field of neurodiversity, which I think has just become such a crucial field. Through her consultations, she has courses, her podcast, her YouTube channel. She even has some quizzes on her website that I've sent clients to, and educational content. She helps individuals, couples, families, and professionals better understand the complex realities of neurodivergence in relationships and everyday life. Her work focuses on autism, ADHD, personality pathology, communication, and the ways neurodivergence is often misunderstood in both clinical and cultural frameworks. And she has an upcoming book that I think is going to be published October-ish. Is that right?
Yes.
The Misunderstood Mind, What We Got Wrong About Autism, ADHD, and Neurodivergence. And in this book, you'll be challenging some of the long-standing deficit-based narratives surrounding neurodivergence and exploring how we have this idea of normal and sort of challenging it. And it's going to be full of your research, your lived experience, your clinical insight, and real world dynamics. And I cannot wait to get my hands on this book. I'm very excited about it. And I'm very excited that you're taking the effort and the time to share because, Greggy said, in our own personal life, understanding this has become huge. Mm-hmm. And then as I am working with couples, and once you learn what it's like to encounter neurodivergence, it's hard to describe, but you know it. It's like you recognize it. And so as I come across couples, I'll sometimes send them to your quiz and be like, I think this is what's happening here. This is the root of where you're struggling. And that means we're going to use a different set of skills to approach that couple. So I'm really grateful that there is someone like you helping us to know what needs to have some different skill sets in order to help this either neurodivergent, both spouses or a neurodivergent and a neurotypical couple be able to thrive. So thank you. We're very excited to have you today.
Yeah. So Jodi, tell us about a little bit how you came along this. Hey, neurodivergency is a difference, not a defect. I think we want to start there. I'm excited to hear what your impact is there and how you came about this and what your insights are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm exhausted after hearing you read all of that. Classic ADHD, biting off a lot. But yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad to be here. So yeah, difference versus deficit. So wow, where do I even start with that? I think really so much of my work starts with my own experience in my own family. And it's been my own training ground along with the clients that I've worked with as a counselor for 20 years and then now as a coach. I'm just learning from others. And I think I always just struggled so much with the idea of deficit when, as a mental health clinician, I also worked with people who had depression and anxiety and bipolar disorder and diagnoses that were very debilitating, but didn't have an upside. There's the downsides. You won't really find someone that says, well, the upsides of depression are this, and this, and
Right.
you won't find that. And so, the more I learned about my daughter, who was the I guess patient zero, if you will, in my family, she
Yep.
was the first
Okay.
person diagnosed when she was 5. The more I saw so much of her abilities and capacity or capabilities, the strengths that along with the challenges, we had plenty of challenges and lots of early intervention supports and IEPs and all the things. But I also saw how her autism gave her super skills or skill sets that were part of it. And so I started thinking, what is this? This deficit disorder doesn't seem to capture all of what neurodivergence is about. And then over time, so she's 23. So it's been almost 20 years since she was diagnosed. And over time, I've come to understand more about autism in the rest of my family. We realized my mother's autistic and my grandmother, and we realized that my children's father is autistic. And then also understanding ADHD, that my son was the same age as yours. He's the same age as yours and was diagnosed as, we finally figured out he's ADHD when he was about the same age as your son, 15. And then I started realizing I'm ADHD and I'm able to see the challenges that has created for all of us, including how we relate to each other, but also all of the strengths. And then this book that I've written is about how, as a society, we've evolved under looking more at the deficits, and now we're starting to understand so much more about how the genetic component of this, how this is neurodivergence is more of a neurotype. And when we look back through history, we see neurodivergence throughout history in a lot of our innovators and creators, and a lot of whom had mental health diagnoses as well. So it comes with the upside and the downside.
Yeah.
So that to me is where it's more about a differently wired operating system than just a deficit. That was I told you I could be hyperverbal. That's it. I'll just go
No.
and go.
That's amazing. It brings to mind a story that I have. It takes me right back to the place. So with our son being diagnosed late into his teens, the one thing that really, it put him into a deep depression and suicidal, really, because what he saw was he was different. And the biggest difference he saw around was relationships with girls. So what I was trying to say is that relationship that really taught him, I am not normal and will never be normal. He got to a point where we had to do outpatient therapy with him, and where I was actually picking him up and bringing him back after he'd been in for about a week. And I was chatting with him on the ride home, and I said, so, if you could go back, would you get rid of this autism? And he goes, no, Dad, this is my superpower. He's like, this is my superpower. Yeah, I have to deal with it and I have to figure out how to deal with it, but it's my superpower. And so he was able to come to that conclusion that you just came to, is yes, it has some things that make you struggle, but on the other hand, it has some big upsides that can really be used to the benefit of a person.
And that deficit framing is so harmful and damaging.
Yeah.
Yes.
For the very reason that, and of course he got this diagnosis at a very pivotal time in his developmental years, when social perception and dating is such a big deal. It's so big.
Yeah, on the forefront. Yeah.
Yeah. And to get this diagnosis that says you're different, you're not normal, nobody's going to like you. Nobody's going to want to have anything to do with you. And then there's so much messaging out there. Oh my gosh, I fight it every day in the comments on my YouTube channel and Facebook where, there are people who are just so judgmental. It's so interesting to me. It's not interesting. It's infuriating that we understand we can't be racist and we can't be sexist, but people are still very willing to be very discriminatory and judgmental toward neurodivergence and say just hateful things like, things like, he's autistic, run, autistics can't be in relationships, autistics can't do this. And it's infuriating, but that's what one of my goals is to set the record straight and help to educate the world on what this actually means.
I mean, who even defined normal? That's the thing, right? We have to do it to be able to group people into a group and work as a society, but maybe the non-divergent people are the abnormal people. And they're like, who's to say? And that's the problem with it, is that we have to put these labels on people to try to group them so that we can somehow work with them.
And I talk about that in the book too, when we talk about the bell curve. And normal, what most people are referring to is most commonly occurring.
Yes.
But that doesn't mix. So an example I give is intelligence is abnormal. High levels of intelligence is abnormal and is a neurodivergence, but we don't pathologize that. We don't say something.
We don't make it a deficit.
Yeah. Right. No, we actually hold it up and say, that's great. Look at that genius.
It's wonderful. Yes. But it's not, it's abnormal.
By the way, our son,
this brought up another story. When our son, we realize now looking back, like, how did we miss this? It was basically glaring in our faces. But when he was about 4 or 5, we're sitting around at the family dinner table, and he says, everyone, I have an announcement. And we're like, okay. And he says, I would just like to let you all know that I am a genius.
He already knew.
He wasn't wrong.
When he got tested, he did test.
He actually did test.
He reminded everyone he was right when he was 4
He was
years
like,
old.
I knew. And we were like, yes, you did.
Yes.
And we kind of laughed it off, haha, you're so funny. And he's like, no, this is factual.
Oh, really? I bet you did.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
But what do you think if you're seeing all this messaging, and obviously it's not about having a deficit. There's definitely strengths and abilities. But what do you think is one of the most misunderstood or beliefs about neurodiversity?
Oh, wow. In general, that's such a big statement. I think that most people's narrative still about what neurodiversity is that it equals autism. Lots of people still don't even understand, like I just mentioned, intelligence, even creativity, musical ability, artistic ability. All of those things are forms of neurodivergence. So many people still think of neurodivergence as a little boy who flaps his hands and gets overwhelmed and sits in a corner and rocks. And that's still or Rain Man. Our generation was first introduced to autism with the movie Rain Man. And so many people still think that's what this is. And we have a lot of work to do to help people know that that is a form of neurodivergence. Those individuals are neurodivergent. But this spectrum is broad, and it's not. Some people go the opposite extreme and say, well, we're all a little neurodivergent. It's like, no, by definition, we can't be. We can't all be highly intelligent. That's at the edge of the bell curve. That's not
Or there would be no curve, right?
Right.
Exactly.
It eliminates the curve.
Yes. So, but the misconception is still that it's these young boys, and that's, I still have. You mentioned your son was diagnosed late in life, and I kind of chuckled to myself because late in childhood, yes, I work with people who are 85, and they're like, I just figured out I'm neurodivergent, So yeah, it was late in childhood, and definitely later than you wish. But I have people come to me who have gone to get evaluations, and this is one of the reasons why when people say, is it worth it to get evaluated? I'm like, it really depends, because it depends on who you go to and what they know. And because people come to me and say, well, I've been evaluated, but I was told I couldn't be autistic because I finished college. And I'm just like, I'm so frustrated. And this is a very common occurrence. I commonly get people come to me. So the psychological community and field is still so uneducated about this. And I'm not trying to diss my own profession, there's just not the training. The education is not there. I have a colleague, Barbara Grant, who finished her marriage and family therapy master's a couple of years ago. And this is 2 years ago. And she said there was not one word about neurodivergence in the entire training program. And I was honestly kind of shocked because I got my degree in the year 2000. And autism was one chapter in one book in one class. And it was about the little boys. Same with ADHD. But this is 2026. This was 2024, I think, when she finished. And not one word about neurodivergence. So we just have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, you were going to go.
I was just going to say, how did we turn that to the couple, right? Because we're really seeing, now we know that this is a superpower and it has its ups and downs, but it does create quite an interesting dynamic when we put it into a marriage or a long-term relationship. And what do you see there?
Where it does not feel like a superpower at all.
Yeah.
Yes. So what I see there is that couples don't, well, they don't come for help, like to people like you or me, until things are really usually pretty bad.
Yes, people wait too long.
Yes.
Like, please go sooner than later.
The younger generations are understanding this so much better. And I love it when I get, some 25-year-olds or 30-year-olds who are engaged or dating, and they're like, hey, we realize that we're different from one another and we want to understand that. And I'm always like, this is great because we can start now. But so many people are coming after that train has been barreling down the track of misunderstanding and just accumulated pain and hurt that is very hard to reverse. It's hard to repair. And one of the biggest things I see is this just misunderstanding how different from one another you are, because everybody comes into relationships with their own understanding of what it's going to be like, what love means, what companionship needs, what communication means, what love feels like, how it's given, how it's received. And a lot of that stuff's invisible. We've accumulated that knowledge over time through
just a secret manual we're carrying, and like our secret manual of beliefs.
Yes.
And you don't even always know that what's written in that manual.
Yeah,
you don't. You're not even
falsehoods put in that manual, right?
Yeah, it's in there, and you've never really examined it because it comes from your family culture, your religious culture, your society. Comes from so many things, and so people bring in different expectations, and then they're so far apart and it feels like harm. Your nervous system registers difference as a threat. And so then we try to say, this is the way it's supposed to be, and a partner's like, no it's not, no it's not, well, you're gaslighting me. It just feels so threatening. And then time and time again, then people get busy with families, and it just creates so much distance and harm. And the difference people are from each other is the biggest factor. It's not whether or not someone is neurodivergent or not. A lot of times I work with people who are both neurodivergent, but when you look at the specific traits, like their sensory differences, how far apart is one of them sensory seeking, the other one sensory avoiding with physical touch.
That could be problematic.
Oh, it's huge. It's one of the most
huge. Yeah.
It's one of the biggest problems.
Right. And the meaning of that is you don't love me because you're not touching me, and you aren't affectionate. And if you loved me, you would be affectionate.
You would want to touch me.
You would want to touch me. Yes.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And your whole podcast is about intimacy. And so, there are so many differences in how human beings approach intimacy and physical touch and connection.
Well, we say in general, that's one of the problems, is we think the differences are the problem. But it's not the problem. It's thinking the differences are the problem that's the problem, because in those differences is really where the intimacy grows, where the eroticism can grow and be there if you allow those differences to be okay. But for some reason we've been
not be a threat.
We've been trained, and we've trained our mind, as you said, as, hey, threat. It's not the same. And so getting our couples to understand that differences is not the threat. It's not a problem. It actually can be the great blessing of an intimate life.
Yes.
Is really challenging. And I can see that if you have the extremes potentially here with one neurodivergent or not, or both, in different ways, it could be even more challenging.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a couple where he was autistic and very just direct and factual in his communication. And she read it as rude, unkind, unthoughtful. And he was like,
Just I'm doing the most loving thing. I'm telling you exactly what I think.
Flabbergasted. And there's like they're speaking two different languages, neither one intending harm and yet both feeling hurt. And another couple came in, like you talked about, with sensory differences, where one was very highly sensory sensitive and the other one was sensory seeking. And so the misunderstandings of what was happening and the assumptions that if someone loved me, it would look like this. Yes. And
that what you just described is
window,
just, you know, rinse and repeat. That's, I see that over and over and over and over again. And the meaning that we take from those interactions is where the harm lies. And so one of the most important things that I do with couples is to help them look at what's actually happening. And then let's examine our meaning, the meaning that we're taking from it. And let's put that on trial. Let's be curious and put that on trial and understand what did that actually mean from our partner's perspective versus what we believe that it means. And, you know, a lot of couples, I know you guys see this, a lot of partners are absolutely attached to their meaning.
Very attached. They're like, no, this is factual.
This is
absolute truth. There is no other possibility. And you're like, let's just crack the door and see.
Yeah. And that can, because it's vulnerable. It's most people when they're coming to us, they're in a place of feeling very vulnerable and guarded, and their nervous system,
and usually very wounded. Like this has been happening over and over, like 1,000 little cuts for a long time.
Death by 1,000. Yep.
Yes, death by 1,000 cuts, and they are not quite willing yet to let go of that because they're not sure if they will be safe if they do.
You know, I love the first word you used was curiosity. I think it's the antidote to tons of stuff in a relationship. In fact, we've done the study of like, how do you get out of your primitive brain and get into your logical side of the brain? The only integration between those two systems is really curiosity. It keeps us from staying in that primitive side of our brain and reacting and saying we're in harm. So how do you take these couples that are so different? How do you get them to believe you? Hey, let's put some curiosity in here and go look and see what's going on. What do you do there? And how does that work?
So actually, I just had this conversation with someone on Substack today about, I actually published an article just about this exact same thing, about curiosity. And the place we have to start is calming our nervous system, because we cannot be curious when we are in that state of fear. Like you were just saying, is this safe? So
we don't actually even have access to that part of our brain. The amygdala and that limbic brain shut it down, and you don't even have access to your prefrontal cortex.
There's no blood flow.
You're regulated.
The blood flow
there's no blood flow.
We don't have it, and our brain feels like it reacts the same to our partner as if we're,
chased by a lion.
Chased by a lion. Exactly. Exactly. So we have to start. One of the tools that I say repeatedly is the most important tool you can have is the pause button. And I call it pause button. Anybody can call it. The minute we start to feel like we're in danger and our body's telling us this is dangerous, we have to pause immediately.
That flooding sign.
Yes.
That's your stop right there. That's your check engine light, your canary in the coal mine. Yes, right there.
Because if you don't answer that brain, it's not going to stop. I tell it's like a 2-year-old standing at the door of the mother in the bathroom. Mom, mom, mom. And you're like, just a second. That doesn't stop them, right?
No, exactly.
You've got to answer and say, I hear you, right?
Yes. And so we have to learn how to stop and go and regulate. And of course, that is inherently difficult, especially when, let's say, one partner's ADHD. ADHDers are we rush toward the danger. That's just kind of our default.
Jump into the fire.
Yes, it's dopamine. It's like even though it really has a bad result, it's dopamine.
That's funny.
And I had to learn myself to pause, because my son and I are both ADHD, and we would really butt heads because we're both rushing toward it, and it would end up just a devastating interaction. And so we both had to learn how to go to our corners. And it's the same with couples. And it's one of the hardest things to teach yourself to do. But I tell couples, only one of you has to call the time out, but both of you have to respect it. And sometimes people still want to pursue you work with couples that the 3 a.m. arguments that are just marathons until people are exhausted and they just collapse.
Yes. And they
It
just wound
reinforces
each other for hours instead of stopping before.
Yes. So we have
harm
to
starts.
learn how to listen to our bodies and recognize that we're feeling in danger, and to go and take responsibility for ourselves and getting regulated. And only when we're both able to sit down and talk together. Sometimes it has to be with a coach or a therapist because people aren't ready to do it on their own. Only
Especially
then
if there's
can we
been a
access-
long history of that conflict and that pattern. Yeah.
Yes, because they just fall back into
it.
the old hamster wheel. But only then can we access the curiosity. And then some people aren't inherently wired to be curious, and it's a learned skill. Some people just don't have it. And there's a default to, I think people who are ADHD or neurotypical may be more likely to be curious. Autistic brains oftentimes come to conclusions, very logic oriented, come to a conclusion, and then that is the solution. That is the result.
I'm just laughing because I'm thinking of my son.
I know. I was thinking of him too. I'm like, yep.
The sky's
Yes.
blue. Don't tell him that. He's going to tell you it's not.
Yes,
He's going to say, no,
exactly.
it's cerulean or something.
Yes.
Period.
Period. Exactly. And so that is one of the things that I think is I won't say the biggest challenges, but one of the most difficult things for autistic thinkers to realize that there are multiple conclusions. And that's that kind of cognitive theory of mind, that
You're saying that
could be other
curiosity is a skill that can be, and you've seen that someone can learn to be curious.
Yes, but I will say a caveat there is the willingness and motivation to learn.
Yes.
Yes, they can, but that willingness and motivation to learn is instrumental. In whether
I'm
or not
curious,
someone-
do you have a set of steps you take them through to learn that curiosity? I guess I'm being curious about curiosity. This is cool. What is it that you drive them? How do you begin with, I have zero tendency to want to do this, to like wanting to be curious?
You
I
can't
think
really
the
motivate
want has
somebody.
the want has to come
Interesting.
from them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right.
And I think one of the bigger motivators for people is, well, for all of us really, is pain. And so pain, fear of
unfortunately.
loss. Yeah. I mean, it's
Fear of losing the relationship or the person or
Yes.
the connection. That can often be the motivator, even though it's not a positive one. It's like, oh, I want to be curious. It's more, I want out of this pain. And if you're saying that's a way, okay, I'll try it.
Yes. I learned very early, and I bet you guys can relate to this, that positive parenting did not work with my children. Reward-based systems did not work because they could do without the reward. It was
Yes.
the consequence.
I was
that
trying to
always-
potty train my
I won't do
son. He
anything,
said,
yeah.
keep your M&Ms. I don't want to change my own diaper. I do not
Yes.
care about your
Too much
charts. I
work.
do not
You
want
just
your
changed my diaper?
toy.
This is great.
I don't want to
Yes.
do this. So I'm going to
Yes.
let you keep doing it. And it was
Yes.
like, oh.
And
We're in
that
trouble.
doesn't end in adulthood. I mean, think about, I've used this analogy before. How many of us would not speed if it was based on, if we don't speed, we get some kind of reward. Like we get some, $20 at the end of the year. The government's like, I'm going to give you $20 if you can go a year without speeding. Rather, how many of us are really not going to speed for that $20 versus if you speed, you're getting a fine. You're going to get this consequence. So it carries over into adulthood. And I think that the motivation to be curious for some of us is just, for me, for example, it's just such a part of who I am. I can't not be curious. I'm curious to a fault sometimes. But for others, there's got to be that consequence that's the motivation.
And maybe I'm not saying how do you motivate them, but this is so important. How do you teach someone to be curious?
It's actually,
because
in
to
my
me, it's just
opinion-
like you say, I think I might be ADHD too. I've never been diagnosed, but I feel like it a lot of times. And so curiosity just comes so natural to me. That's where I guess I'm struggling. Like when you find someone that doesn't have that natural tendency to be curious, how do you help teach them if they have the motivation to do that?
To me, it's pretty simple. It's just asking several layers of why. Why is
Yeah.
that? Why is that?
Yes.
And why is
Or
that?
tell me more. I'd like to know more about that. You give them a few key phrases that, can you tell
Yeah.
me more about that?
Well,
Can you help me understand that?
I think people
Why is
sometimes
that the
struggle with the
response?
tell me more because they're like, tell you more
Accusatory
what?
almost. Yeah.
Yeah, what tell you more what? But the why is that asks them to come up with a reason, like an actual cause, because cause and effect is logic. And so if the effect is this,
Oh, and if
or
they're
if the
logically,
observation
they
is
can
this,
understand
yes,
that. Yeah.
then why is that? What contributed to that? A lot of, and I know we're talking mostly about the autistic thinkers here, but that tends to be that, and personality disorders is a whole other conversation because there's just not going to be a motivation to understand why they're
Right.
so. But autistic thinkers oftentimes are the ones that struggle with that inherent curiosity.
That's so interesting though, because you're right with that question. You're tapping into the logical side of their brain, so it gets them out of
Yes.
that responsive side of the brain. Because you're saying, "Tell me a why," and so you have to go back to the logical side of the brain to figure out what the why is, right?
Yes. I
And
always
there
try
is such
to.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, I was going to
There
say, I
is,
always try to use what people's natural ability is. So, like,
Yeah.
I was working with a physician, an ER physician last week. And so we talked about diagnosis. When someone comes in, how do you decide what the treatment is? You ask, what's happening? Why is this happening? I can see what's happening. There's blood everywhere, but why is there blood everywhere? And where's it coming from? And why is
Root
that? And why
cause,
is that? All these layers of why. And with an engineering brain, why is this device not working? What's happening? Where in the code is something not working? And that curiosity is what guides them to the solution. And so with relationships, it's the same. Why is that? And why is that? And why is that?
Yes. Yeah, that's amazing. No, because you're literally taking their strength, like you're saying, and applying it to the relationship. But you know how to do this. Let's just apply it to your relationship.
Yes, exactly.
Very cool.
yeah. So what do you think in the area of intimacy, which obviously in neurodivergence, there are different sensory sensitivities or sensory levels like you've talked about. And so we talked about sort of the emotional intimacy, which we absolutely agree regulation has to happen and then curiosity is absolutely essential. But in the area of maybe more physical and sexual intimacy, what do you find are the common challenges for those and strengths? We want to see both sides. What are the challenges and strengths in those working through neurodivergence or maybe neurodivergent and neurotypical relationships?
Yeah. So, well, I'll start with the strengths. Some of the strengths that I see, neurodivergent individuals can really, really go down the special interest can be a huge bonus in intimacy.
Yeah. If your spouse is the special interest, right?
Yeah. Or somebody who's like, I really want to understand everything about the body and what makes it tick and what makes it aroused and what works and what doesn't work. And I've seen that be a really positive thing for a lot of couples where, somebody really understands how pleasure works and how to pleasure. So that can definitely be a strength. As far as challenges go, I think that going back to sensory, well, expectations. Oh my gosh, this isn't even about neurodivergence, but just our expectations about sexuality, our roles, our sexual roles, our comfort level with being naked and
Yep.
speaking up and saying what we want and need. There's just a lot that comes with that we bring into the relationship. And a lot of times, a lot of people are really uncomfortable with saying what they want and need, and they really want their partner to figure it out.
Or just no.
Or just no, yeah.
Or just
And
automatically no.
that honestly
somehow.
doesn't work. Neurodiversity aside, that just doesn't work for any couple. But then that above and beyond that, I think the sensory differences can be a real challenge. And learning to understand and be curious and to even recognize your own body and the way your body responds to sensory experiences is huge because, oh my gosh, intimacy, sexuality, closeness, there's so many senses that are firing up. We have smells and sounds and tastes and textures and pressure, touch, all of the things.
Get all of them, right?
Yeah, it's a
Yes,
highly
yes.
sensory active engagement.
So someone who is highly sensitive to smell, the smells of someone else's body, even the pleasant like smells. I wrote about this in an article, the one that I was talking about just yesterday. I dated a man who was autistic after my divorce, and he had a high sense of smell. And I remember walking in the door to his house one day, and he was like, "What is that smell?" And I didn't know what he was talking about. He wasn't really even referring to me. But about 30 minutes later, we finally figured out it was a lotion that I had put on at my house an hour ago. And it was something that was causing him to, like, his throat was closing up. And I could relate to that because I have sensory sensitivities with smell too. And so I immediately went and washed my hands. But if I didn't understand sensory differences,
Offensive with that.
oh my gosh, yeah. Oh, you're go wash your, because he was like, oh, go wash your hands. I can't tolerate that. He could tell when I changed toothpastes. He would say, oh, you changed toothpaste just from kissing me. And then one day I had just brushed my teeth and I kissed him, and he was like, he jumped back like, oh, like his body was shocked. And he said, did you brush your teeth with cold water? And I'm like, yes.
Wait, cold water?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I said, yes.
But that's the level of sensitivity that's up there.
Well,
Yeah.
he said, who does that? And I was like,
Everybody?
who doesn't? And he's like, I said, do you run the warm water? And he's like, yeah. I mean,
I'm in the warm water category.
I'm laughing over here. I'm like, oh, now I know my neurodivergent friend over here to my left uses warm
Yes.
Warm water girl.
so exactly. But if you've never
that assumption.
actually realized that that's not how everybody
Or you
experiences
set
it.
candles out, they're going to be so romantic, and the other person is like,
Oh, my
quick,
throat
turn the
closes
candles
up.
off, I
Yeah.
can't breathe, and you're like,
yes.
what's the matter with you? Like, you can really misunderstand those meanings and the cues. And I'm coaching one gal right now whose husband is autistic, and he has a very difficult time being touched, being naked, being, just even approached. And so we've been working on sensory sensitive ways to do that. But her meaning coming into me was, he doesn't desire me.
Right. That's
That's
the
not it at
meaning.
all. He
Yeah.
actually does desire her. He has some obstacles and challenges with the sensory part of being with her and being in his body. And so we've been working through those, but the meaning was absolutely not about desiring her.
I think something really interesting here, as we talked about this, a reminder of me, is that when my son went through this, I probably asked him 1.5 million questions and drove him crazy, right? Because I was trying to understand what his world was like.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things you've just discussed about reminds us of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we don't feel that way, then we need to remind that they're so sensitive, their brain's firing off, they can tell whether you use cold or hot water when you brush your teeth.
He tells us when the pitch of the refrigerator
Yeah.
changes, or when the bread recipe that we got from the store, like they changed it.
They changed this recipe.
They changed the recipe. I'm like, how do you know? He's like, I can taste it.
Or the record player is not tuned exactly
It's
right.
a quarter of a pitch
the
off.
electricity is
Humming
running through the
higher or
wires,
lower,
My
these
daughter
things that-
is the same way. And I want to say that the opposite is also, so when we think about that bell curve, neurodivergence is on both sides of the bell curve. So we have people who are highly sensitive, and then we have people who are very not sensitive,
Interesting.
hyposensitive,
and need a lot of stimulation to get
to
or
notice.
touch.
So you're telling
yeah,
so
to
you could
notice.
be diagnosed autistic and be on the other side of that spectrum too?
Oh
as
yeah,
neurodivergent?
yeah. That's have you heard of the term alexithymia?
I have not.
So alexithymia is our personal awareness of emotions in our body, and recognizing and understanding what we think about the word emotion is we use it interchangeably with feeling,
Right.
because feeling is visceral. We actually have a physical
Can
sensation.
find a place where we're doing it, yeah.
Right. So a lot of people they're hyposensitive to those physical sensations. So let's say, what we might get a lump in our throat when we're scared or angry, or our heart might pound. Someone with alexithymia, they don't notice that.
They can
don't
identify it at all. Yeah.
Their body's doing it.
They don't
but
notice
they
the
don't-
shift.
they literally can't feel it. So it's very hard for them to articulate what they're experiencing emotionally, because they're not recognizing those cues. The same is true with sensory experiences. My son, for example, he's very hyposensitive to taste and smell. So he's like the opposite of your son in that slight differences in flavors he won't notice at all. I had a friend whose son was autistic, and he worked in a grocery store, and he had such a limited sense of smell that I remember one day the meat cooler went down and the meat rotted, and he was the one that went in to clean everything up because he couldn't smell it. And he was like,
You're the one
everybody
going
else
into
was
that,
like,
yeah.
thank God for you. And he's like, it's fine with me. I couldn't smell anything. But then with couples, I see this showing up in hygiene, where if someone's hyposensitive, then they may not even, it's harder for us to even like smell ourselves, but they may not feel uncomfortable by being dirty or by not having brushed their teeth, and that furry sensation you get on your teeth, that may not feel uncomfortable to them because their brain doesn't notice it, or they don't notice, just body odor, they don't notice it or feel uncomfortable by it. So there's not motivation to shower or brush teeth.
And
Because
then
that
their
also
spouse
is-
might call them lazy or,
and uncaring because,
Yeah.
yes, you're lazy, you're a slob. And if you cared about me, you would want to be clean. And that
Right.
person, their frame of reference is, I don't even understand why this is impacting you. I don't notice it.
It's not their lived experience, so they don't even really have anything to relate to is why it's problematic.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
right.
so interesting. So we've sent people up to your website to take these quizzes to help them understand these tendencies. Does it cover both sides of that spectrum, I'm guessing?
Yeah.
Hyper and hypo.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I think the hyper is what tends to get noticed more.
Noticed.
And I think the hypo is, it can, as people are learning what sensory sensitivities mean, they automatically go to the hypersensitive.
Yeah.
And don't realize that it's just as prominent on the other side. The hyposensitivity is just
And
as
can cause just as many problems and difficulties.
Even in
Yeah.
like temperature, like where one's really sensitive and one's not sensitive at all, they're in shorts and a t-shirt and it's 20 degrees outside and they're like, I don't need a
exactly
jacket.
exactly.
It's
So if you've
fine.
got a let's say this is actually a very common thing that I've run into. You've got an autistic person who's kind of the money manager of the family, pays the bills. They're hyposensitive to temperature, so they, in the summer, they want the thermostat to be on 78, 80 degrees, and in the winter they want it, it's the opposite, and the rest of the family is dying. And but they're like, there's no need, there's absolutely no need for us to turn this temperature down. It costs money to cool the house. And then from their frame of reference, there really isn't a need. And they have, it's like color blindness, not being able to know that everybody else is experiencing all this nuance
Right.
in color.
Right.
And it can just feel very dismissive. And then the person who's hyposensitive is floored. It's just like, what are you even talking about? Oh, you're being dramatic. Then the meaning starts kicking in.
And the meetings start. I say, there they
meaning
come. I
about
see
you.
them forming already. You don't
Yes.
care about us. You're so selfish. Why don't you, and then well,
the other person,
yeah.
you're so dramatic. You're so dramatic,
Yeah.
and
there's
what's
nothing to even complain about. You should just be
Yes.
grateful. I'm providing.
Yes.
And then this goes back, if we're curious enough to understand how the other one's perceiving the world and understanding where they're coming from, that's the antidote to all this, right?
Or that there is another perception available.
They-
That's
they
usually
do
where we
perceive
start.
all,
Like,
yeah.
yes, this is
Yeah.
the meaning that came for you. Yes, this is what's you're experiencing right now. But let's look at the buffet of possibilities and
Yes.
see if something else might be a little more true or helpful or kind, which like was really what helped me with my son. He tends to be extremely direct and it came across as rude. I remember telling him all the time before we knew he was autistic, can you put a little honey on that? Can you sweeten that? Can you try that again?
Yeah.
But now I just see it as honest. And it actually opens up conversation and there's the meaning is no longer the same, right? I don't see it
Yes.
as rudeness at all.
Yes.
I just see it as sharing his mind. And I think he had to learn that other people had different spaces they could be in too. And that's something that he's had to learn. But his tone could be misread as rude.
Yes.
And to him, it's just factual.
It's just factual. And what you're talking about is the double empathy problem. It's something called the double empathy problem, because where a lot of people approach this is the neurodivergent individuals are the different ones. And so they need to learn
They
how
fix themselves. Yeah.
Yes. And so a lot of people will drop their spouse off with me for
Fix them, make them talk
little
nice.
they'll drop them off with me and say, we've learned that he or she is autistic, so y'all need to figure that out. And and that's a big problem.
This is a group project, by the way.
Yes, because the double empathy problem recognizes that we all are coming at it from our perspective, and we as human beings can't take this higher ground of just because more people in the world relate to me than relate to you doesn't mean that you're the problem, that you have to come to me. You have to you have to fix yourself or change yourself to make me more comfortable. The real solution is, again, in that curiosity space of, okay, how can I understand you better? You understand me better. And how can we accommodate each other so that we're not harming each other?
Right.
But nobody
You're building
gets
a bridge
the high
between
ground.
both, right?
Yes.
No one's superior, no one's inferior, no one's better, no one's worse, but let's build this bridge.
Right.
Yes.
And have you seen when you can do this, that there can be, those marriages can work both in the emotional and the physical intimacy side of the marriage?
Yes. It really, just like any relationship, it comes down to the two individuals in it. And just regardless of neurotype, neurotypical, neurodivergent, we really have to look at our alignment as two human beings, and alignment and values and emotional, and just all the things. And when there is alignment in a neurodiverse relationship where there's two different neurotypes, or even similar neurotypes but different software, it's absolutely possible for couples to have a very fulfilling relationship. But I won't say across the board every couple can do it, because they can't. Every neurotypical couple can't.
Yeah, doesn't matter what couple. We've always said that, like, we can't guarantee that we're going to help this relationship work. What we can guarantee is we'll help you understand yourself better, and that you can find some tools to become a better version of yourself. And then you get to decide, because the other person can decide what they want to do. They have their own decision points. And so
that is my philosophy exactly as well. And I think a lot of marriage therapy inadvertently makes the relationship itself the client. Yeah. Preservation of the relationship is the goal, when sometimes that's devastatingly destructive.
That is
first
just
thing
so
they do.
harmful.
In fact, I'll tell you, the hardest thing that we found is when you get to a point where you can determine it's not the case, getting some people to move from that point, because that's the hardest decision to make. I think that's my hardest thing I've ever coached on, is like, you need to move, and it's just too hard.
But I do love how you're saying it's not about one spouse, whether neurotypical, neurodivergent, becoming like, we got to get this person to be the same as me. And I don't think that's helpful at all. And so I love how you're saying that, like, no, we've got to understand each spouse in this, and let's get clear on some meaning frames and some, ways to engage, understanding each other and building those bridges. But we're not going to make spouse A like spouse B, or spouse B like spouse A. That's
because we know that tension
that collapses actually a good relationship. Yeah,
the good relationships require that tension of differences.
I always like to go back to the visible differences, because we accept those readily. My mother is 4'11". And so even most homes are not built for her height, counter height, cabinet height, they're not built for her. Right. So she does a lot of self-accommodating, but she has stools everywhere in the house. But when she lives in a basement apartment with me. So I can't just expect her to just deal with it. I also, for the things that I know she needs to reach readily, I put them on the bottom shelf. She's 81. I'm not going to say, well, you're the short one, you have to climb up the stool, even though it may harm you.
Right. Let's just make you taller, stretch you at night. That's the obvious answer here.
Seems so ridiculous, but they try to do that with
let's put you on stilts, because really, I'm not going to accommodate anything. I'm just going to make you be taller.
That's exactly right. And so that's very tangible and relatable for people. When our neurology is the same, we can't become something that we're not. We have the operating system that we have. We can come to understand it better. There are certain things about the brain and our neurology, like there's hardware and there's software, and we
There's
come
ways
with
to
certain
expand and
things.
some that we can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has absolutely been fantastic and so interesting, and we so much appreciate. We could probably spend all day talking about this.
I know I can. I love talking to people like you.
Yeah, especially unfortunately we have an hour here. And so is there anything that you just one thing you want our audience to know, first of all, and then if you could follow up on how they can reach you, get a hold of you, take in your content, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So I think that we've already really said it, but the most important thing, you've already brought the word curiosity, and the other C that I really focus on is clarity. So curiosity leads to clarity. Yes. I think we always have to put our perceptions and our feelings and our thoughts on trial in order to get clarity, and we have to be curious to do that. So many people just get stuck in these beliefs they have, the stories that we tell ourselves, and that will ultimately keep us locked into the hamster wheel, and we will never get out of it. And so oftentimes you need somebody to help you through that. And it's important to reach out to somebody who, like yourselves or me or a therapist who can help you be curious, help you understand, and also help you to understand if you're being harmed in an abusive kind of way, because neurodiversity being neurodivergent doesn't mean someone is not capable of being abusive and harmful, or just no more than a neurotypical person. Neurotypical people can be abusive and harmful, and oftentimes we need people to really help us get that clarity. Yes, to see it and get that clarity. So those would be my two things that are the most important fundamental things to seek out, is curiosity, or clarity that leads you to curiosity. As far as me, my website is jodicarlton.com, Jodi with an I. I have a lot of resources there. If you search my name on the internet, you probably will find the podcast and my YouTube channel. Those are the two. My podcast is on my YouTube channel as a video cast for several seasons, especially the recent ones. But I'm also in Substack now, where I publish articles. And so those are. I'm on Facebook. I'm not as active on Facebook because it stopped showing stuff to people. Like I'd try to interact with my group there, and it would show it to 4 people. So
the algorithms can be frustrating.
Yeah, it is. It is frustrating.
Well, awesome. Thank you so very much.
Yes,
it's been such a joy.
An absolute delight and pleasure to meet you and talk with you in person.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great conversation. And I was looking through your podcast. It's a great podcast. And I'm so glad that people like you are out there helping people too. It's a team effort.
Yes, it is. Yes, absolutely. And I think we have this great village, which is why it's so fun to find other, members in the village, and you're like, come on, let's go, team.
I totally agree. Yes.
Well, and you see the common threads when you start talking about the things together. No matter who we bring in, we see some common threads of what humanity is and how we can use these in the relationships, for sure.
Yes, and how crucial emotional regulation is, and curiosity and clarity. It's not the sexiest tool. Emotional regulation is the most powerful.
And that's what people come to us with, hey, intimacy, we have problems sexually in bed. And we're like, okay, well, let's talk about your emotions. They're like, that's not what I came here for.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get there, I promise. Let's get you fixed here first. So thank you so much.
Yes,
thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Until next time.
Keep undressing your intimacy.
Bye-bye.